So today in this class I'm going to show how to paint fuchsias in watercolor, and here you can see some photos I took of some fuchsias from a garden of a friend of mine, and you can see they come in many variations. So here we go. And let's start with these light ones, and I put a little tip of one there. That's also my own little new addition. I normally don't do the background first. Normally I do the subject matter first when I'm doing still lifes or florals. Because you know, I don't really know what I would like to do with it a lot of times, if I want to leave it a white background, or if I find out once I've painted the subject matter, if a light background, white, light, or really dark background, or a combination thereof would be the best solution. And since the subject matter is the most important part, that's what I want. I don't want to have to adapt my subject matter to the background. To me, that's kind of like, you know, opposite. And especially if I have a very dark background, they bleed much easier. So if I get a little bit of water on, you know, into my dark background that I've already painted, when I start painting my petals, it's going to bleed into my petals.
Even if it's dry.
Yeah, well, if I, you know, it's not always that you're 100% precise. If I get a little bit of water over, right? I mean, that's can happen very easily. So I most of the time, I can't say always, but most of the time, I will paint my background last. And for those reasons. Okay, so let's make a decision here what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna paint these here light, and then these here are gonna be darker. I'm probably gonna go with my permanent rose again, and then I'm gonna go with some Quinacrodone red. Now, if there's some of you that don't have a pink red and you would like to try and paint with a pink red, you can come up here and get some pink on your palette. I'm happy to share. And let's just get started with one of the nice bigger ones here. And it's going to be the same method that I have used all along, which is wet into wet, which is my favorite way of painting, especially the first go around, so to speak. You know how I also like to have the colors mix and mingle on the paper. I'm taping, yes, I'm taping, good. And I'm in focus. So again, I never go all the way out to the lines. Can you see I'm leaving myself a little bit of room to the pencil lines. And eeny, meeny, miny, moe. I'll take a little bit, very watered down pink, and put it over here, and I'll give it a little bit of that. So here you can see, I'm giving it a little bit of cobalt. So it's just kind of makes it a little bit more lavender. So here I am mixing a color on my palette. And then I'm just gonna go in and get that color on. And I'm gonna go, let's see, we should also decide a light source. Let's put it up here on the right side. And I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna go this far. Then I'm gonna rinse out my brush, dab, dab. Might put just a hint of just the pink on. Dab it into here, and then let's pull out. And see how I went on my towel to just get a little bit more of that pigment off, and get that tip in. So I want the tip quite light still. Of course, you know, it's being hit by the light source. It's the closest to the light. And I could go in while it's still very wet and put a little bit more of that cobalt in, just to push it down. Can you see that? Yeah. Kind of like that. And I always have so much fun letting the colors mix and mingle on my paper, so I always have to have a little fun with that. And then I rinsed out my brush, and then what I'm gonna do is, with a damp brush, I'm gonna go in with the tip of my brush that's cleaned here, and I'm just gonna kind of let that disappear a little bit, just so there's not such a hard edge. It can disappear up along there too, just because I don't really want to have a hard edge there. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. And so that already gave it a nice shape.
What size brush is that?
This is a size 12. Yeah. In this particular brand, it's a size 12. And then I think I might be able to, if I keep this wet, if I hurry up, and I could have wet it already. If I hurry up here, I'm gonna paint this side of it, but not the turnover. And I'm gonna go in and let that pick up here, like that. And see, I did it while it was still wet here, so I didn't get a bleed back. And I didn't have it too wet here on my brush. So I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna go in, put a little bit of that pink in.
So you're not using any red on the top?
No, I'm
pink
not using
and
red
cobalt?
at this point, no. I'm just using that pink. And so again, as I say, you're more than welcome to borrow from me. And I'm gonna rinse it out and pull it out here. Like
Sorry, I
that.
wasn't watching
Yeah,
closely enough. Did you wet that one down altogether?
I wet it down, yes, I
How
did.
do you do that and not get kind of the wash back in the other
That
one?
because I didn't wet it more than the dampness I could see was still there. So it's the same balance. Then you don't get a bleed back. But if I had come in with a super wet brush, I would get a bleed back. So I could see it was still damp enough for me to go in and then just continue. And that's, you will have to judge that yourself on yours, because you might not have that going on. And if you're in doubt, just wait till it dries and then paint one of the other ones. But I think I got away with it. That is a little hard. That's a little hard, because there I had to make sure that my brush was not too wet. If it was wetter than what I had here, I would be in trouble. Just, and so just, if you are in doubt, just don't do it. And I got a little bit of a light there, but I kind of like it, so I'm gonna leave it. And then there's a little bit of an overturn where I can see kind of like the other side of the petal here, it's kind of turning. So I'm gonna wait, that's gonna be darker. That's why I wanted it light there on the top side. And I like to get that color variation. That's just my personal preference. I really like that. That's why I love watercolor, I think, is because, you know, they flow and they do those things. So that's why I try to always have that happen. And then now these two have to dry before I can do anything else. So I'll leave you with that so you can kind of get started on yours, and then I'm gonna call you up again. Everything dries a little bit lighter than what it looks when it's wet. I'm sure you noticed that. So mine's dry now and I'm okay with it. I can show you, you know, I have a little one that peeks out here. That's the back side of this, you know, there's 4 of these cover petals, sepals, whatever. I don't know what they're called when they are this color. And I actually added on a little one here. It wasn't in the original, you know, because it can be hidden behind. Or I decided in this one here, I'll just let it peek out. So it's further behind, and so this is a little tiny one, and you might not have this one. You don't have to put it in, but just to show you, I use that little bit of Quinacrodone, permanent rose and Cobalt that I had mixed.
So that's the Magenta.
So I'm just gonna let that peek out here behind. It's optional.
Permanent rose and
Cobalt.
or Magenta, right? Can you use?
You can use Magenta, absolutely.
Okay.
I use Cobalt in my permanent rose. And by the way, I wanted to show you, because I have it here in my fancy dancy binder that I made. here on my page with the pinks. I have Quinacrodone red, Quinacrodone red, Quinacrodone red. That's and that's Quinacrodone coal and Quinacrodone red. So can you see? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 Quinacrodone reds from different companies. See how different they are? And
Renaissance.
this is Renaissance.
Yeah, I like that.
And Renaissance is PV19. The other 3 reds are PR209. It's pigment numbers. P means pigment and R is for red and V is for violet.
That's what it's doing.
But just to show you, and then on this side here, I have my Quinacrodone Rose from M. Graham. And then here I have Red Rose Deep from Da Vinci. And then here I have Permanent Rose from M. Graham. And so you can see here that they are all PV19, but they are slightly different. And then here I had that one that was called Quinacrodone Red, that is also that pigment. So see how it really depends a lot on what brand you're using. So anyway, that was just a little color for it. So that one dried, I think, whoops, pretty well. And the other one here is painted exactly the same way, so there's no need for me to paint that for you one more time. Just, I would make it a little bit darker than here, because it's, you know, you want to push it back. And then I thought it would be a good idea to paint one of these little guys here, these little buds. So I'm just going to wet this little bud and make sure here I have a little overlap of that little leaf that's overlapping it. And so I'm putting water inside, yes, just like that. And again, as always, I don't go all the way out to the lines, and I don't pay attention to these little lines there. For right now, I'm just painting it as one unit. And I think I want to get a little bit more of a Quinacrodone red into it. So I'm taking some of my Quinacrodone red, which is more like the true red, and then I'm going to take a little bit of that pinkish I mixed with the cobalt blue and the permanent rose, just to get a little color variance. And I'm starting up here underneath where it's attached to that green.
So you mix 3 colors.
Yeah, basically I mixed 3 colors. I just used that puddle that I had. And so I'm pulling it down on the shadow side, because remember we decided our light's coming from here. So this side of this little bud will be darker, right? So that's where I'm putting the pigment first, and then up underneath here. Of course, that's also going to be a little bit darker, because I'm going to paint this one green.
And then you leave it pretty watery.
Yeah, this is wet into wet. And so I want to have it so that it flows. That's the whole point here.
So you tip it.
Want to have it so it flows, and then I dipped into a little bit more of that Quinacrodone red. Maybe a little bit like there where that line is. Now I'm going to rinse it out. Dab, dab. One more time. Dab, dab. And then I'm just going to pull the color out here and then down.
So that's lighter.
It's lighter on that side, yeah. Of course it would be. And then it's going to be a little bit darker, like right underneath here, because that's away from the light. And especially if I can kind of get it up like that, so I get a little bit. Can you see how I'm getting a little bit? So I get already indicating a little bit of those lines there. I kind of like it the way it is, so I should probably leave it.
So that's your
Quin red.
Quin red, and then I had, you know, made it a little bit pinker, and now I'm going in with a clean brush. I just want to not have these edges so sharp. I don't like that. I don't mind if it kind of bleeds out a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do on this one, because I would like to get a little bleed back there, Just, I don't want like a zigzaggy line and a really hard line. I don't think that's going to look very attractive. So I'm going to go in. I better get myself some yellow out in a hurry. Here we are, transparent yellow. And then I'm going to go in and wet this stem here, down here. And I'm not gonna wet all the way down to here because I don't want it to run all the way in and create a big bloom. And I might just go out and do this little leaf also. So I have water on, but I'm keeping a little dry area between the red and the stem. Can you see that? Okay. And now I have some yellow on here. So let's just put some yellow on the sunny side, so to speak. That's the one that's closest to the light. I'm gonna put that yellow on. And then I can go down here. I'm still a little careful that I don't touch. Leave a little tiny bit of a dry area there. And then I'm gonna leave the yellow on the tip here, and then I'm gonna use some of my Antwerp blue, and that's that blue here. You could use French ultramarine blue too, but now I decided I wanted to use the Antwerp. And if any of you would like to have some Antwerp from me, I'm happy to share. And then I'm gonna go down here and get that on so that it can still mix and mingle with that yellow. Gonna rinse it out a little bit. And now I'm gonna go down and let it say hello to the yellow there. Hello, hello. And then I better move on here. So now I have the first coat of color on, and I try to get it a little darker on that side. There we go. Dab in. Lift out a little bit maybe. Put a little bit more blue on this side. A couple of places. Maybe here.
That's just with your Antwerp?
That's just my Antwerp blue.
And your
Transparent yellow, yeah. Or whatever yellow you're using.
What blue is that you put?
Antwerp.
Oh.
Antwerp blue. All right, can you see how I got a little bit of bleed back there?
Mm-hmm.
And that was on purpose. I wanted that. Now, if you don't like that, you shouldn't do it. But I happen to like it. So I think it looks a little bit more organic. And now I can go in and just darken a little bit more here and there. I'm gonna darken a little bit here, there. Maybe a little bit here. Okay, I better leave it alone. I kind of like it that way. So I'm gonna leave that. And this is one of those places where I could also decide if it's all up to you. These are all decisions you make. I could leave it like it is here and not put that little vein in, or I could decide I wanted a little bit of a vein there. And then later I'm gonna go in, there's gonna be a little bit of darkening a couple of places. But for right now, it's fine. So there's that. So now you know how to paint your little buds and the stems. went ahead and painted all 3 of the buds with the stems. I saved 1 more leaf and I saved 1 more stem with that, whatever it's called, green thingamajig there. And then of course we're going to paint the bell. I call this the bell. I don't know what it's called. And then I have on this one here, I have a little, there's a little turn on this one. And actually I decided to make a little turn on this side too, just to show you. And we already have seen that in the other flowers that we, like especially the roses we painted. But, a little repeat is always a good idea. So I'm going to show you that as well. So start with the easy one. Let's just paint this last little leaf here that I saved. So again, same method, water inside, not all the way out to the edges. And then I can start with a little bit of maybe the yellow. I mean, this is arbitrary. Sometimes I start with the blue. This time I start with the yellow again. Maybe here, like that. And then I'm gonna take some of my Prussian, if you have Prussian blue, that's pretty much the same color, but I'm using Antwerp blue. And then painting the rest of this little leaf and letting those 2 colors mix and mingle on the paper. I always like that, as you know. Of course, I have more fun when I do that, when I see what kind of happens. Always a little surprises here and there. And then I want it really dark right in here because I want to say that it's underneath that one. So adapt in some more of that Antwerp blue, and I can also put a little in the tip here just for fun. And then because it's wet, it's going to kind of travel a little bit back and forth and hopefully do something beautiful. It's my plan. See, I like that because it has a little bit like, then it's like it's going up a little bit. Can you see that? So I'm going to leave that for just a little bit and let that dry almost, and then I'm gonna, if I remember, go in and give it a little vein. So then we're gonna move on to this one here, and it's exactly like the other stems. So I put a little bit of water inside, and then here, and then I want it super duper dark down there because it's going in and away from the light, and I want it to, really push those 2 front petals out. And I can do that by making it dark. So not too much water on. And then I'm gonna start with my Antwerp blue this time. And I'm starting down here where it's really dark. And then letting it run up. And am I doing it? Yes, I'm on the right track. And then I'm gonna go on the shadow side with the blue. And it's very wet, so I can keep going with the blue. So that's a little opposite of what I did earlier. Remember, I started with yellow, but there is no, you have to start with one color or the other. It's completely up to you, and it's a little bit, what you want to have happen. So if I am saying I want it dark, I tend to like to start with the blue, because that's the darker of those 2, right, that create my green. I put an arrow where the light's coming from, so I don't get confused. And now see how by just running a little bit of that yellow up, I turn that Antwerp into green. I just love that. And if you paint this way, and when you learn this way, my theory is that you are not going to be one of those painters that say, oh, I struggle so much with the greens. Because I've shown you how you make your own greens instead of having you buy a green out of a tube. I think those are the painters that start that way. They are the ones that then later on they have a really hard time with greens, which I find greens are not hard at all, because it's just yellow and blue, and then it depends what kind of blue you're using and how much of blue and yellow, and you get all sorts. And then if it gets too bright, remember, opposite color to blue is red. So if you wanted to dull it down, you'd put a little bit of red in here and there. So I did it here just for fun. And And we put some more of that Antwerp in here. A little bit more here. And definitely a whole lot more here. Get that real dark down here. That's what I really want. Super dark down there. And then a little bit more dark on this side. And up there. And then I'm gonna have gravity do me a little favor. And if I hold it like this, the pigment's gonna run down that way, and that's gonna make it a little darker. And while that's happening, I better get my act together with my credit card here. On this one here, I think it's about right now. And see, now it's almost dry, but not so dry that I couldn't scrape out. And can you see, because it's
Not so wet.
it wasn't so wet, so now I got a little highlight on there. I love it. You know, that's because it was a lot drier, but it was still damp enough that I could scrape away the pigment. But then it's not damp enough to run back in, so then it becomes lighter. So that's another reason I love using this for that kind of stuff, because, you know, I can get highlights and I can get the darks, and sometimes, you know, I don't really know what I'm getting, and, you know, it's more random. And before this dries on me completely, I want to lift out a little highlight here with a thirsty brush, just on this side, just like that. Can you see that?
So you just pulled out some of the pigment?
Yeah,
with
pulled
the-
out some of the pigment now that it's, you know, not completely dry, and, you know, it's kind of damp, but the shine was beginning to leave. So then if I lift it out at that time, then it usually kind of stays. If I do it when it's too wet, it just runs back again. I can you see how that gave it a little bit more shape? So that's always fun. And then, I don't know if I can. See, up here it's too dry. That's okay, I don't mind. So then I'm gonna show you, I have that little turnover there. So that's gonna be darker right here, and then that edge is gonna be light. I can put a tiny bit of water in, barely any water in, and then I can go in, and I should create this kind of a lavender color, but kind of darker, kind of like those colors. I did that with Quinacrodone red and a little tiny bit of Cobalt. And then I'm starting on that side against the edge there. That's dry, so obviously it'll hold, and you can see now some of it is hitting that water that I put in. So obviously it starts flowing. And I'm dabbing in a little bit more here. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush, dab it on my towel, and go in from the dry side here, and then just gently nudge it out here. So get that nice transition. There. Can you see? Now I have that nice turnover on that little petal there.
That's the pink and the
That was the Quinacrodone red actually I used, and then a little bit of the Cobalt blue to purple it up. Make it a little bit more lavender. Now I'm gonna go in, similar color, and now I'm gonna do it on dry, so I gotta not be dilly-dallying too much. Of course, I have created a little tiny bit of a turn there on the petal. And I'm kind of putting a little bit of that color here on the outer edge. And I've got to make sure that it's wet enough so that it hasn't dried before I come in with my damp, clean brush and kind of pull it out here. And then there's a little highlight on that edge, and it's really dark where it's away from the light. Can even leave a little bit of a white sparkle if I want. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. And then there's one more thing I need to do, but I can't do it right now because then I need to go on the inside and create a little, because it's going to be a little shadow underneath that little lip, you know, because that's blocking the light. So I have to wait before I can do that. So then let's move here to this part. And I think I'm just going to paint these three here Kind of like, it's like a bell almost. And later I'll separate it. And I have a little bit of pink in my water so you can kind of see where I have put it. Can you see that? Again, same thing, not all the way out to the edges. And then, let's see, now I want to get some of my permanent rose and some of my quinacridone red kind of mixed together. Fairly dark. And then here, let's go in. Need to make it a nice transition up there. And I'm just gonna go on this side. Get some more color in. Now I don't want to go too dark to start with, because I'm gonna have to go in later and create the real darks. Go in and just fill that out. And it's kind of sorted like this. And I just want to get color on before it dries on me. I'm going to get a little bit more just plain quinacridone red. So there we have that. And then before it dries again, I don't like this hard edge. I don't really exactly know how it goes up there, so I'm just gonna fuzz it out and drag some of that into here and let it disappear. That's when I do, when I don't really want you to look too closely at something. Then I lose the edge. Not my mind, hopefully, but the edge. And then here, if I can pull out a little bit of a highlight there and maybe a little bit of a highlight here, and it's gonna flow in again, but that's what I want, just to get a little bit of a highlight there. And I think,
Pull that out with a wet brush or?
not with a wet brush, with a thirsty brush, which means that it's clean and damp, barely damp. I've wrung out all the water. That'll pick it up. See, now I did it much better. Here, like that. And then I'll just have to work with whatever shapes it dries with. And I can't paint anything in there or around there, but I can go out here and I have a little petal here and I can paint that. I'll pick that same color. That's kind of mix of permanent rose and quinacridone red. And I'm just gonna paint that in here. And I would like to have it just a little bit lighter on this edge. And then later it's gonna be dark underneath there. But right now I'm just gonna do it like this. And there's a funny little curly Q on this petal that's in front of it. So we'll deal with that later. So now I'm gonna go in for the first time while it's still damp and introduce a little bit of that permanent magenta into my mixture of the permanent rose and quinacridone red. Just on the tip, just want to darken it a little bit. Rinse it out, and then barely touching, just make sure that it's just kind of mingling a little bit, blending a little bit. Got to be very careful when you do that. Sometimes it's better to just let it dry and then deal with it later. But we'll see what we get there. But can you see how it's now beginning to come to life a little bit? And then I'll paint, I can't paint this one, but I can paint this one. And I'm just gonna paint on this one here. There's also, can you see? There's the petal and then it goes up like that. So I don't paint the outside, but I'm gonna paint the inside. I'll do one more for you so you can see that. And you know, then I want you to have plenty, I want you guys to have plenty of time to go down and paint and not call you up here all the time, so.
Wait, but what's the outside and the inside? I don't see that.
So this one, This
that
is
the
kind of like the
outside?
inside, right,
Oh, this
of
the
the petal.
inside.
And then this one is bending up, so the outside bends over there. Can
Oh,
you
that's
see that?
bending up towards us.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's like that.
Okay.
So it's like this.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the inside, and it bends out, and you can see some of the outside is
And
covering up.
Don't paint it also.
Yeah, it's best to. I find it best to
Right now.
paint them in two.
Okay.
In two goes, so to speak. I think I might even go in here, just because it's behind. So that was a permanent magenta that I put into my color here, just here. Can you see how that? I think that looks pretty darn
Just on the
good.
very, very beginning.
Yeah, just to that, and then a little bit more of this color on, and then I'm gonna just pull it out. Of course, again, it goes away from the light in there, and I want to, you know, it's behind sort of this one, so that's why it needs to be darker. And then I can just, yeah, and I just put a little bit of the permanent magenta on the tip of my brush, without rinsing the other color out. So there we have that. Nice. Can you see how, that's why I love permanent magenta, to darken my reds and my pinks, because it still reads red/pink. Where if I put blue in, it would swing more to the purple.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
So there we have that, and then the other, I'll paint that, and then there's this little curlicue. I'll just leave that. That's gonna be super dark. So, yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot to do. try to paint, pretty much everything is kind of painted like one layer, right? Which you have seen. So I left this little curly Q for you, and then I left this little turnover. I already painted those other two little ones, but I saved this one so I can show you that one more time, how that works. So let's start with that. Same old, put a little bit of water in. The way it works is the tip will be the lightest. This side, the underside, will be the darkest in that little flip over, because the light's coming from here, so it's obviously hitting the tip, and then like the outer edges, right? And then underneath here is away from the light, so that's going to be quite dark. We only have a little tiny area to transition through, so we don't want to have it too wet, and we want to have pretty thick pigment. And I'm going to dip into all three reds, so that's Quinacrodone red, permanent rose, and the permanent magenta. And I'm going to start here underneath where it's the darkest. I'm putting in that dark pigment like that, going a little bit further on this side because that's also away from the light, like there. I think that's pretty good. Dab in a little bit more pigment.
Did you wet it? I messed it up.
I wet it inside,
You did.
just not all the way out to the edges, because I want to make sure that I get flow and that I don't get an outline. So let's just spread the love here, the pigment that is. And I need a little bit more pigment here, and dab that in. And I'm going to go in with a little bit more of that dark right here, underneath there. And then back with my damp brush, so I can kind of pull it out. I'm going to put a little bit of red on it.
Keep your camera.
Yeah, camera's on. Thank you for checking. And then pull it out. Want to have a little bit of color on, but this is the lightest part, is that little tip there. Get rid of that white sparkle. I can dab in a little bit more of that dark while it's still wet, like there. And then with this one, I'm just gonna smooth it out a little bit. And get rid of that white sparkle, get rid of this white sparkle. There. Can you see how?
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
So that's step one on these flips or turnovers of leaves, and I can see I got outside the line here a little bit. And so let me show you step two, which I can't show you on that one because it's wet. Now I'm going to get something really dark and have another little brush stand by that's just damp. And then see here I did the same thing on this little thing and on this little thing, right? And so now I go in with a real dark on the inside of the petal, and then with a damp brush I loose the edge here so that it just kind of gradually.
And that was on dry.
Oh, I did that on dry because it's such a small area. Can you see how that really?
Yeah, that's it.
It's because you need to have that darkness on the inside here, because that little flip there, you can see even when I do it with my hand, it's, you know, blocking the light. It's blocking the light. So let's do it again over here. And I do it again on dry, but you got to be quick so that it doesn't dry on you, you know, with a hard edge in here. That wouldn't look so good. And then again with a damp brush, just pull it out so that that edge disappears into nothing. There. Can you see now?
Yeah.
Much better, right? So I'm still letting that dry, because if I try to do that now and this is still damp,
Easy peasy, man. We're just gonna get down.
Yeah. That's so
Mine
pretty.
looks so much like yours.
yes, there you go.
It's so pretty.
So here I have this weird little curlicue. So I want that really, really dark. And then really dark. Really, really dark. There. And then I'm gonna go in and just with a barely damp brush, because it's such a tiny area, I'm just gonna pull that out so that there's still a little bit of a highlight on that edge there. I think that'll look good. There. Can you see that? Just that little area. It's just a little tiny area, but it still matters. It's those little golden areas that makes the whole thing. So I have to wait for that one to be completely dry. I don't want to risk anything. So in the meantime, I need to split up in here. Right now I painted this more or less looks like a one shape. So I'm going to put a little bit of water with a very light touch on that. It's like there's two petals on the outside, and then there's another, you know, little grouping, I think it is, of petals on the inside. So I'm making myself a dark red with using Quinacrodone red and some of the permanent magenta. And I'm just gonna follow. I had a line here, I can barely see it, but I can see it good enough.
First.
I wet it a little bit first. You can see that because it flows. Yeah, on top of my paint, you can do that. Just don't go scrubbing back and forth, you know? Just be light-handed. Just lay down the color, and you want to get those little wigglies in there.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm gonna go in with a little bit of a bigger brush because I thought that was too small. And then I'm just gonna make sure that I get no hard lines here.
Oh, I see, you're separating.
I'm separating there, right? Because now all of a sudden you can see that this one's underneath, right? Can you see that?
Okay, now
It's underneath. And then I'm gonna go in while it's still damp. And I'm dabbing in some more of that permanent magenta, because up here and underneath some of these, I really wanna make it dark. Now we're getting to the drama part, right? And then with a damp brush, I'm barely touching the paper, because now, you know, I got 2 layers of paint on. But I just wanted to just spread a little bit. And then let's go in and do something here underneath, like here, for instance, where it goes under. I feel that that's a good opportunity, maybe here. And again, a little bit up there.
Hit or miss.
Not everywhere, because can you see how that kind of then starts giving it some a little bit more dimension, and there's undulation going on, and like that. I like that. And I keep an eye on it, and I try to evaluate and look. And so here, if I do a little bit up like that, and then very gently just kind of soften the edge here on this side, and I can soften the edge on the other side a little bit, just like that. Can you see how it gives it like there's a fold?
Yeah.
And here I'm getting a bleed back because apparently I was, but it's okay. I'm going to take advantage of it, and I'm putting a little bit of dark in there to create another little fold. Can you see that? And then again, I go in with a barely damp brush, and I just kind of, with the tip, I'm barely touching. I'm kind of like I'm tickling it, just to soften the lines a little bit. And then here could be another little dark area. And you gotta just look at what happens on your paper. Might not be the same as what's happening on my paper, and you better react to what's happening on your paper.
Well, it's not the same, believe me. There's no problem there.
Oh, it's just knowing when wet is just right, and that's just, you know.
Yeah, it
That's
takes
why we came
experience,
here.
and that's why, you know, I'm sitting in this chair and you're sitting in your chairs, because I've had a chance to practice longer than you have. There's no like mystery to it, really. It's a matter of practice, and yeah, it's practice, you know. And so now I'm going for the drama now. So and drama is, you know, putting in some of those darks where I feel they could benefit.
And that's where I get
The painting.
because then I get two.
Yeah, but it, you know, the more you can put some of those little dark areas in, the more you're really bringing the lights out and the darks pushes way back in. So here we could also darken a little bit up here. And then again, clean damp brush, just loose the edge. There's a little sparkle that was not helpful. There we have that. And then here, I'm gonna try something. We'll see if that works. I wanted to see if I could get like as if there's a little bit of an indentation here. So put some of that dark on, and then I go on either side and loose the edge. Can you see how that just kind of gives it that little bit wavy? Dark pushes down, light brings forward. When you put something dark next to a lighter or mid-tone area, you're automatically making it look lighter. The dark, and so can you see here I have my little turnovers there, and I put that darkness on the inside to pop out those tips, right?
Yeah.
Here, remember I couldn't do it yet because this was still wet, but can you see how flat that looks compared to that? So I could totally leave it like that, but can you see how much more effective it is when I give it that little extra oomph, I like to call it. And so now this is dry, so I can give this one the oomph that I want to give it. So real dark here. And make sure you get in there so you can lose that edge before it dries on you. That's the hard part. So you gotta be just ready. And see, now I have to clean my brush, otherwise I keep dragging that color the whole way, and I don't want to do that. There. Can you see now it puffs out much more? It's more dramatic. And then we got all that done, and then let me show you some fun little things you can do on these. Optional. So now I'm not going to go with that dark permanent magenta. Now I'm going to go with a mixture of the permanent rose and the quinacrodone red, which is what I used for these little buds. And so I loaded my brush here, and I can still see a few of my little lines. So I put a little bit of color on, and then on the dry, and then right away I go in and I loose the edge on the side that's away from the light. Can you see how now and let's do it up here too. That same line, just a little bit like that. And go in with a clean damp brush on the side that's away from the light. And can you see now I am telling you that they're separated, right?
Oh yeah.
So that gives it a little bit more, and then underneath here could be kind of nice to do something a little bit dark because it's, you know, away from the light. And again, I want to just go in and just lose it, the edge a little bit. Just I dabbled in. Can you see how nice that looks? I mean, I think it looks nice, I guess I should say. And then here, bless you, I want to go in and create a little bit of a separation. And now I'm going to do it on this side here because I want to say that that petal there is on top. Can you see?
Yeah.
And I don't do the whole thing. And see also here, I skip some, because otherwise then it becomes too predictable, too, you know, it's just, you got to leave something to the viewer's imagination. That's at least my philosophy. And so let's go in and do a little bit up here. Just lose that edge. Goes under there. Can you see that? I kind of like it now. If I like it, I tell myself it's time to stop. And then I can do the same thing here. I'll just do one more just because I have so much fun doing this. I love doing these things. It's kind of like I'm taking bigger areas and now I'm beginning to split them up a little bit. And you can see how that really, really helps. And then here I want to go from down here, I think. And I mix it up all the time. and I make sure I just do a little bit. I can always do more. If I find out that that wasn't enough, I can always do more. But once I've done it, it's very difficult to kind of lift it out again. Can you see how that begins to then give this little guy some pizzazz? Let's do a little bit up here, just like there. And there, gave it a little wiggle. Because, you know, nothing should be too perfect. Nothing should be too perfect with this. Nature is perfectly imperfect. Can you see?
Yes.
So fun, 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 and more fun to be had.
So did you mask off the whole,
And then I masked off my
the-
little stamens.
the
And
whole
if you,
thing, not just the dots at the end?
not just the dots at the end, I did the whole thing, and I don't know if that was good or bad. But I'll paint them. They're kind of pale. And so I put a little masking on, and now I can just put a little paint kind of on top of the masking, and then it'll go outside the masking a little bit. So I just put a little bit on top, underneath here. And, you know, I've decided mine are kind of reddish, I guess. And which I think they are in the picture. And I can do them a little bit more orangey red some places.
So you're leaving the masking? You're not taking
I'm
it
leaving,
off?
yeah, because the whole idea with the masking is to save the white. So if I took it up, I mean, then it was kind of a waste to put it on in the first place until I painted that area. So then I'm gonna take it off later, of course.
okay.
No, you never want to leave masking
But I
on.
don't know why are you painting it? I
So-
don't understand.
Yeah, you'll understand in a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not painting just on the masking. I'm also painting, you know,
so
a little area. So then when I take the masking off, I'll still have some of those little white sparkles
I see.
that otherwise I probably would have lost.
You're painting next to it, kind of, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so then when you take it off, the white next to it.
that's the hope.
It over, and then she takes the masking off.
And I will do that.
Right.
I'll do one more demo on this one, but now you can see. So I just put that on, masking, and then
Okay.
in order for if I was not going to paint my background, so I'm going to paint in a little bit. I'm just going to do like a vignette style. The background, vignette style this time. So I'm not going to do a big dark background. I'm going to show you vignette style. But I'm going to let you paint, and then I'm going to call you back in half an hour. I'm going to show you how to do that. Everything is dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into what is called vignette style. That means that, you know, you just have a little bit of color going out to 2 or 3 of the sides. So I'm going to use a big brush. It has soft hairs, can hold a lot of water, and because I don't want to disturb this paint I have laid on here. And so I'm just going to put a little bit of water over here, maybe bring it out to this area here, a little bit longer up. And of course I'm going to avoid painting water over my flowers and buds and stuff. So I'm just, and then I usually, and you can see it does bleed a little bit. I don't care, it's fine. I like to use cobalt blue for this because cobalt blue is such a light and mild color. It's easy to lift if I needed to. So I'm just going to put a little bit of cobalt around here. And then I'll have to let it dry. And I'm going to put it up along this side. And you can see I'm keeping going with my big old brush here. I could even go over this and up here and here into this corner. Oops, I dragged that green a little bit. I'm not gonna worry about it. And a little tiny bit. Probably have to switch brush. I don't want any hard lines, so now I'm just gonna go in and loose the lines here, and I want this to disappear into white, and the main thing is I do not want any hard lines anywhere here. So there. And then more water on in here. So this is totally not something you have to do. I will say it does take a little tiny bit of practice because, you know, you kind of got to be quick and have a little bit of a steady hand. There. Just, I'm on hard line patrol right now, I call it. There. In there. Maybe a little bit here, and then kind of goes out into nothing. There we have it. And so then it has to dry, and then I can take the masking off, and then I have that little bit of paint I put on the stamens, and then I just need to go in and put a little bit more dark on. So now it's kind of, can you see, and then I have kind of a light area here. It's not perfect because, you know, I'm a little bit rushed, but that's okay. You get the idea, I hope. Put a little bit up here. The main thing is you don't want to have any hard lines anywhere. So this blue goes from downstairs. Sometimes I'll go the other way and I get a little bit of bloom here. I don't really mind that. That's okay as long as I don't get lines. I'm kind of okay with it. There. So I'm just going to let it dry. And then I have another little thing. I was going to use this as a teachable moment. Maggie got so excited that she got a thumbprint of her color on the white there. And that was, of course, not intentional. So that's where I say, that's where Mr. Clean comes in. So, you know that Mr. Clean magic eraser that you buy for scuff marks and, you know, cleaning and, you know, the grouts on your, in your bathroom and stuff? It has to be the original kind. Don't take the new and improved and stuff because there's stuff in it. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. Any place where you buy cleaning supplies. Where you buy cleaning supplies. Home Depot. Yeah. So a little bit of clean water on and
knife.
squeeze it out really, really good. And sometimes I will even go here because it holds so much water. So you want to make sure that it doesn't run out once it starts scrubbing. And then I can just very gently scrub it out.
Can we use that also when you're painting seeds?
Pardon me?
Going out of the line, for example?
Yeah, you can do that, but it's kind of, you have to see, I have a piece of masking tape on because you can't really control it. So it's not for fine cleanup. It's for like, you know, a smudge or somewhere else. You drop your brush, whatever. Or you could also, if you have a big area where you want to, and see here, I could also go in, but I would never go in now like this because then the odds are I'm going to mess up that. So I would always put masking on and protect my painting. See, because otherwise you're gonna it can get carried, you know, it can go out of control, and then you're gonna have a big boo-boo on your hands. So you can see how you can clean up a painting.
Oh, thank you.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
And I'll just have to let this dry, and I might have to, we'll see if it dries enough that I can take the mask. For those of you that are still here and want to see, mine dried enough that I can take that masking off and just show you those stamens. See what they look like now. So there we have it.
Gee,
And that
looks just
doesn't-
like mine, does it?
Doesn't look very good.
Joke.
But let's see if we can doctor them up. So there'll be a little bit of dark, and then I put little dots inside there. There'll be a little bit of dark there.
You're using the same color that you use for all the other stuff. You're not
Yeah, I did.
okay,
I just
okay.
mixed it up a little bit. I put a little bit of permanent magenta in to just darken it a little bit.
I have a fuchsia in my backyard. I should go look and see what
Yeah,
it
go
looks
look
like,
and see. And you know,
if I haven't killed it yet.
they're all like a little different, these flowers. So I don't want that like white thing. I just want to have a little contrast. Let's just put that in here and here.
So you took
And-
the stuff off first.
Yeah, I took the
Okay.
stuff off
I missed
first. There's a little bit left there.
Did you put yellow there?
I put a little bit of yellow in with the red, just because I felt like it. And then again, I dab a little bit. Just because I feel that it has that, you know, I just dab a little tiny bit. I just want to get rid of that white, but I don't want it all the same color because, you know, they're going to be hit by the light. And then here, a little bit dark here, and a little bit up here. And then I drag it out like that. Just so you get that little bit of dabbled.
How many years have you been painting, Ada?
I think I started in the early 2000s.
Oh, that's all?
Whoa.
Yeah. So I,
She paints
two-
every day.
2002 or 3, I think I got my first set of watercolors. So, but then, you know, whoops.
I won't live long enough.
16 more years to get us. I won't be around then. Sorry.
Why?
I'll be dead.
You guys gotta wait. She's actually really old. She's
I am
older
really
than
old.
dirt.
I just
She's
look
super
good.
pretty.
Oh, very
I
good.
can say that because
Thank
she's
you,
my
Linda.
relative. I'm probably older than she is.
I doubt it.
I don't think so.
So,
Three top 75.
No, I can't top that, but I'm very close.
it's all age now. At our
That's
age,
true.
you know, it's just a number. So you can see, I just, you know, dabble in a little bit and then give them a few little dots down there and smudge it out. And you know, if you, yeah, I am recording it, as a matter of fact.
We should watch.
And so now I'm gonna go in with a heavy gun. See, I put a little bit of blue in so I can just get a few little extra darks in here and there. And especially here.
Are you masking eraser?
Yes, right here. And so I'm just making sure that I don't have it like too precise. And a little bit of darkness up under there because it's going to be in shadow, right? And then drag it down.
See, I would get the flowers wet when I paint. I love this, but I can't find you do it.
Well, we'll have to ask the expert.
Hopefully it's on YouTube.
And again, a little bit of that dark.
Did we get some? I didn't.
Yeah, she did what,
There.
she finished the rose things and the, what do you call those?
Did you finish this grouped rose thing?
And those. Yeah, those are-
So I think that's pretty much it. And then I got a little dot out here. That's okay, I can probably get rid of it.
So what artsy thing did you do before you started watercoloring?
I did hair and makeup for weddings and for photo shoots. And then I did international marketing, I taught languages, I did all sorts of different things. Most of it not particularly creative. And so I'm just putting a little bit of darkness here because I feel that they'll be a little bit in a shade. There. Just so that it's not all the same color. Because it's again, think dabbled light.
David, tell us.
Yeah.
So how did you take that?
Oh, so that is, I take a big old brush. for that particular stuff, I usually like to use these big round ones. They make myself some big juicy puddles of all the colors I had in the painting. So this, permanent rose, the transparent yellow, the cobalt blue, and the Antwerp and permanent magenta. And then I dip my brush and I start
With just water.
with the colors on, and I make sure that I go fast enough that nothing dries on me, everything blends. And I don't rinse out the brush, I just dip into colors and let them blend. And then you can see I have like captured, it's called captured negative spaces.
Right.
You can see like here, if I can just get around this area, I can take a break. And then
Gotcha.
I have this little area is also captured,
break.
right? Yeah,
Right.
another break. So it's,
So wherever it's.
yeah, and so, and then I
okay.
have to make sure that I don't have too big of a color difference on either side, so that it
Okay.
looks like there's like a border. So,
Wow.
I really love that.
and then you can see here was of course a
That's
big
huge
area,
Okay.
but I start with the small ones until I kind of
Okay.
get the feel for it, and then I just go for it. And if you have to, I mean, sometimes it's just you need to, either you didn't mix enough color or whatever. Let me just grab a little scrap piece of paper so I can show you what it looks like when I do it. Now you can put a little, I mean, if you want, you can put a little bit of water on, but it's best not to have too much water on, but have a fully loaded brush. So here, for instance, let's just grab some of this red. So I start out, and then I don't go very far, then I go in here
Oh.
and go here. And then I say, okay, now I need a little bit of yellow. And then I can take some more blue.
That was like a flower right there.
How do you keep it off your paper?
That's cool.
And then I can take some of the permanent magenta. And I just,
I want most of it to dry,
yeah,
because you don't want to be running all together.
I want it to run together, but not so that it's just one color.
Right.
And I can go back in again if I have too much of one color, like here, for instance, go in and change it. And I just want everything wet so that I don't want any hard lines. And if, like, say I didn't mix myself enough puddles, then I clean my brush real quick before it dries, and then I go in here and then I pull it way out. So I get a soft edge, and then I could go in and mix myself some more, and then I can start again.
Wow.
And you wouldn't be able to see where that happens.
Thank you.
But
See,
you
then I
didn't
could go
mask
back in.
this, You just painted around
I just
it.
painted around it. You can mask it, but masking is hard to get precise. Then you end up with this white shadow line, and that's not always that attractive. And then you can see how you can then go again. And so you get some neutrals, and you get, but everything will match with what you have. And if your brush gets too dirty, you can always, rinse it out, because you don't want everything to be then brown all of a sudden. And then we can go in again and make it green, and you can see. Let's just keep going. And I like to use, I almost always use the colors that I painted my subject matter
So
in.
they don't
because
clash,
so
yeah.
that it all blends together. And then
Right.
hopefully my idea with this kind of a floral is that it's like I've taken it with the camera, how the flower is in focus, and then
Yeah,
the
the
background is
background.
kind of flushed out.
Yes.
And so it can be kind of like the leaves, a little bit of the sky or whatever. So here you can see a sample of the finished painting I just demoed for the class. And I also have this version that I showed them with the dark background that I explained in the class. So hope you have fun with painting your own fuchsias, and wish you happy painting, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. See you soon in another video.